Hello, welcome to Culture TV and to our online program, Let's Speak Russian. This is lesson 12. So we've now spent a fair amount of time learning about the basics of the Russian language. So the alphabet is an absolutely essential requisite. You have to be able to read and understand written Russian before you do anything else, right? And then all of the greetings and other words and phrases that we've been looking at, all of that is fairly simple stuff, really. So now it's time to move on. We're going to start learning about the Russian grammar in this video. Now, as you may know, the grammar of this language is notoriously difficult. It's not the alphabet and it's not really the pronunciation either that make Russian difficult. It's the grammar. So there will be quite a few unfamiliar and new concepts to you in our course, and you will inevitably struggle in some places. I have to say that really does come with territory when learning Russian. But please, let this not discourage you. In our course, we'll be taking everything nice and easy. We'll be learning about the grammar at a comfortable pace, and you can trust me that I'll be able to give you very clear and accessible explanations. We'll try to make it as enjoyable as possible for you as well. Now, the other thing I'll mention is that perhaps you've seen online some people discussing the need to even learn Russian grammar. Why bother if it's so hard? After all, if you get your grammar wrong, people will still understand you. And I don't disagree with that, but we are still going to have quite a lot of lessons on grammar in our course. I'm not going to go into the details of that right now. There will be a separate video on the channel at some point if you're really interested, behind the philosophy of all of this, if you like. But trust me, without grammar, you cannot master Russian. You can't even get to an intermediate level, really. So with that done and out of the way, let's now make a start. So, grammar starts with verbs. Verbs are the most fundamental and important parts of speech. For those that don't know, a verb is a word that denotes some sort of action. We use verbs in our speech to convey that something is going on, something is happening. They can also be used to show an occurrence or a state of being. We use verbs all the time in our speech, and moreover, there are almost no sentences that can exist without a verb. So there is this generic, standard form of a verb, if you like, that you find in the dictionary. We call this the infinitive form of the verb. In English, this comes in the form of to and then the verb. For example, to do, to talk, to speak, to play, and so on. That to at the start is what makes this word here in the infinitive, in the generic form. In Russian, you identify a verb as being in the infinitive by looking at the ending. You will see that almost invariably they will end in the soft sign, tia. Alright, so when you look in the dictionary and you want to find a verb, most of the time you will see the soft sign at the end. That is the generic infinitive form of the verb. But this is rarely of any use to us. Quite often we want to modify this infinitive in such a way that we can give some more detail about the action. Who is doing the action, for example, or when was it happening, or when will it happen? This sort of modification in grammar is called conjugation. So conjugating a verb means changing the infinitive in such a way that we now know who the action is performed by or when it is taking place. So first of all, let's talk about how we're going to communicate who is doing the action. And for that, we need to have a look at pronouns. So pronouns are words that replace nouns. These are words like I, you, he, she, we, they, and so on. We use these words along with a verb to say who is doing something. So let's start by looking at how to say these in Russian. I will be ya. Ya. Nice and simple. Ya. You will be ты. Ты. Then we have он, она, and оно, which mean he, she, and it, respectively. Он, она, оно. We then have мы, we. And then another form of saying you is вы. Now we've seen this briefly in a few of our previous lessons. I'm now going to formally introduce this to you. These are two different forms of address in Russian. Ты, you, is used when you're talking to someone that you know well, someone that is your friend or a family member, as we've been saying. It is an informal form of address. Вы, on the other hand, can mean two things. Вы with a capital letter is formal address, when you want to be polite, when you're talking to a stranger, someone who is maybe much older than you or higher in status. Вы with a lowercase letter is used as the plural form of you. So when you are talking to many people, then you would use вы. So once again, ты is only ever used when you're talking to one person. And this is one person that you know well and you are using informal address with. Вы with a capital letter, and I have to say it's not always there. Some people might write it with a lowercase letter as well, is used when you're being polite, formal address. And the other meaning of вы is you, but many people. This exists in almost all other European languages. Okay, so this is exactly the same as the French tu and vous, if you happen to know about that. Okay, and finally we have они, which is they. So once again, я, ты, он, она, оно, мы, вы, они. These are all the pronouns in Russian. Now let's go back to our verbs and let's see how we can add these pronouns on to a modified form of a verb to say things like I do, you do, he does, and so on. So let's take the verb to do in Russian. Делать. Делать. Okay, this means to do. As you can see, it ends in the soft sign, t. That means that it's in the infinitive. In English, we have to at the start. To do, делать. So let's see what happens when we say I do. Я делаю. Я делаю. Я делаю. I do. So we've changed the ending of this word somehow. We've removed the de and the soft sign and we've added the letter you. By doing this, we are showing that it is I who is doing the action. Я делаю. How would we now say you do? That will be ты делаешь. Ты делаешь. You do. So we've now added a different group of letters to the end because now somebody else is doing the action. It is you. Let's now move on to he, she, and it. It will be он, она, оно делает. Он делает. Она делает. Оно делает. All of this means he, she, or it does. He, she, or it does. So can you see that in English we've also changed it? It was do originally and now it's become does. Now in English this only happens to these pronouns, whereas in Russian, as with many other languages, you have to change the verb for every pronoun. So if we want to say we do, that will be мы делаем. Мы делаем. We then have вы делаете. Вы делаете. Pay attention to the pronunciation. We're not really making the ye sound, the penultimate ye sound, that clear. It merges and just becomes more of a y sound. Вы делаете. That is, you do, formal or plural. And finally, они делают. Они делают. They do. So once again, я делаю, ты делаешь, он, она, оно делает, мы делаем, вы делаете, они делают. Please make sure that you're repeating all of this out loud. So let's have a look at what actually we've done. We've taken the verb делать. We've identified that it's in the infinitive because we have the soft sign at the end. We now remove this ending and we're left with дело. That is what we call the stem of the verb, the main part of the verb. And we now add different endings onto this stem. You for I, ешь for you, singular, ед for third person, singular, so that's he, she, it. Ем for first person plural, that's we. Ете for second person plural or formal. And then jut for third person plural, they. Let's now apply these rules to another verb. Let's have a look at another example. The verb думать, думать in Russian means to think. Думать. So, we remove the soft sign and we add the endings that we've literally seen just now. We will get я думаю, I think, ты думаешь, you think, он думает, она думает, оно думает. He, she, or it thinks. Мы думаем, we think. Вы думаете, you think. Они думают, they think. Once again, please do repeat after me. Я думаю. Ты думаешь. Он, она, оно думает. Мы думаем. Вы думаете. Они думают. So what we've seen is the principle of conjugation of verbs. Alright, so once again, what we've been doing is called conjugation. We've been changing the infinitive of a verb such that we can now add on pronouns to say who is doing the action. It is really important to change those endings. In Russian, you can't simply take a pronoun and take the infinitive and stick them together. You have to modify that infinitive. So I'm now going to get you to practice this a bit more. For homework, I'd like you to have a look at these 5 infinitives in Russian. As you can see, they all end in the soft sign. Use the rules that we've talked about in this video. Remove the soft sign and add on the corresponding endings and conjugate these verbs for all of the pronouns. Please do this aloud as well if you can. We'll take a look at the answers to this next time. At this point, I'm going to finish this lesson. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for your attention. See you next time. Goodbye.